When I refused to lend my husband's brother money, his family declared a family vote to force me. They smiled, majority rules. My husband just watched. I smiled back and said, then let's vote on something else. Moments later, I pulled out a paper and the room exploded in chaos. This happened last year. Still fresh. Still raw. I was married for 8 years and I thought I knew what loyalty looked like. I thought marriage meant partnership. I thought family didn't just mean blood, it meant whoever stood beside you when things got hard. I was wrong. Let's rewind a bit. I live in a small town in upstate New York. My husband, Brian, comes from a large, very traditional family. Think every Sunday dinner at mom's type of thing. Lots of expectations. Lots of opinions. Lots of unspoken rules. I didn't grow up like that, but I made the effort. I showed up. I smiled. I brought dishes. I played nice. His family never quite accepted me. They were polite. But there was always a layer of something. Like I was on the outside of an inside joke I'd never be part of. Still, I loved Brian, and I believed love was enough. Then his younger brother, Ryan, got himself into some serious financial trouble. Ryan is the type who always seems to have a plan that never works out. From dropshipping empire, to crypto consultant, to luxury car flipping, he's tried it all. And failed at all. The family always brushed it off. He's just figuring it out, they'd say. He's ambitious. Well, this time, Ryan took out a huge personal loan under his name and convinced his parents to co-sign. Surprise, he defaulted. And the bank came knocking. I guess they assumed I'd be the safety net. I work full-time as a surgical nurse. I'm good with money. Brian and I have no kids, and over the years I've been pretty disciplined with our savings. So naturally, Ryan shows up to our house one day with this whole sob story about needing $18,000 just for a few months. I told him no. Politely. Calmly. I explained that our money was tied up in house repairs and that I wasn't comfortable lending that amount to someone with a track record like his. He didn't argue. He just nodded, said he understood, and left. I actually felt bad for him for a second. Until 3 days later, when I got invited to a family meeting. It was at Brian's parents' house. I walked in and every sibling, every spouse, the parents, everyone was there. Except Ryan, weirdly. He was running late. They were all smiling in that overly nice way that makes your skin crawl. Then it started. Brian's dad said they'd been talking as a family. They were concerned about Ryan. They knew I had the money, and they decided that since Ryan's situation affected all of them, they should handle it democratically. And that's when they said it. We're calling a family vote. A family vote. Like I was some hostile corporate takeover target. I looked at Brian, waiting for him to shut it down. He didn't. He just looked tired. Or maybe scared. Hard to tell. I asked, "You're serious?" His mom said, "Yes. Majority rules. That way it's fair. Like this was some courtroom and not my life." I stayed quiet. They voted. Every single person voted, yes, that me and Brian, should lend Ryan the money. Then they all looked at me. Waiting. Like I was just supposed to agree because they'd done some weird culty ritual. I nodded slowly and said, "Okay. Let's vote on something else now." There was some confused silence. My voice stayed calm. Flat. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I slid it across the table toward Brian. He looked confused. His dad said, "What's this?" I said, "It's a copy of the quitclaim deed for the house Brian and I live in. The one we fully own. My name is the only one on the title." More silence. I opened the envelope and pulled out a second paper. And here's a notarized prenup amendment I had drawn up last month. Since you all like votes, I thought I'd make sure my assets are clearly separated. Brian, I left a copy on your nightstand last week, just in case. His mother looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. His sister's jaw dropped. His father's face went red. I looked directly at Brian. "So, do you want to have another vote? This time about whether we stay married?" He didn't answer. The room was dead quiet. Then Ryan walked in. And that's when everything really fell apart. Ryan walked in, all casual, like he hadn't just thrown a grenade into my marriage. He gave that same half-smile he always had, smug, like the world was supposed to bend for him. "Sorry I'm late," he said, flopping into the only empty chair at the table like this was some kind of brunch. He looked around, noticed the envelope on the table, saw everyone's faces. "What did I miss?" he asked, grinning. No one answered him. His mom cleared her throat and said, "We were discussing options." I looked directly at Ryan. I told them no. He tilted his head. "Yeah, and we voted." I smiled. Just a little. "Right. And I voted too. With legal documents." That wiped the grin off his face. I could see his brain working, trying to figure out where his backup went. That's when it hit me. He didn't know about the prenup change. He didn't even know I was serious. He looked to Brian. Dude, what the hell? Brian just sat there, still not saying anything. So Ryan snapped. He stood up and said, loud, you're just going to let her do this? Let her embarrass us like this? Us. That one word made something snap inside me. Like I wasn't a person anymore, just some outside enemy. Brian opened his mouth, but still nothing. That's when Brian's dad slammed his fist on the table. This is not how family works, he shouted. You don't bring lawyers into a family matter. You don't draw lines in the sand like this. We are not strangers. I leaned forward. You made it a business transaction when you voted like a boardroom. You treated me like a bank account. I responded in kind. His face turned purple. That's when the second twist dropped. Brian's sister, Morgan, quiet, always keeping to herself, spoke up. She said, you know what? I'm tired of pretending too. Everyone turned to her. I lent Ryan money last year, $10,000. Never saw it again. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to cause drama. But watching you all corner her like this? I'm done staying silent. The silence was deafening. Ryan blinked. What are you talking about? Morgan laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh. You promised to pay me back within 6 months. You told me you were flipping a Tesla and needed cash fast. You ghosted me after I wired it. Ryan looked to his mom. She's lying. But something shifted in the room. Like a fog lifting. That's when Brian's youngest brother, Jason, jumped in. I thought I was the only one, he said quietly. I gave him $5,000. On my credit card. He said he needed it for a course. That was 2 years ago. Suddenly it was like a dam broke. One by one, people started speaking up. A cousin, an uncle. Even Brian's mom looked like her stomach had dropped. Turns out, Ryan had been leeching off everyone, bit by bit. Always with a promise. Always with a lie. I just sat there, silent, watching it all crumble. Ryan tried to yell over them. This is bullshit. You're all just trying to make me look bad. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't need help with that. He turned to Brian, now panicked. Say something, man. Brian finally looked at me. And all he said was, when did you get the prenup changed? There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not, let's go home and talk. Not even, you were right. Just that. I stared at him for a long time. My throat tightened. Not from sadness, just exhaustion. About 6 weeks ago, I said. Right after Ryan's last opportunity came up. His mom was crying now. His dad sat down, like the fight had drained out of him. Ryan stormed out of the room. Nobody followed. I grabbed my purse. Brian stood up like he was going to follow me. I held up a hand. Don't. And I left. But the story didn't end there. Later that night, I got a message from Morgan. She wanted to talk. What she told me changed everything I thought I knew about Brian's family and about my marriage. Let me know if you want part 3. Trust me, it gets darker. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, trying to feel anything. Anger, sadness, clarity. Nothing came. Just a ringing silence. Around 2 a.m., I finally opened the message from Morgan. She just said, can we talk? I know stuff I didn't say earlier. I think you deserve to know. We met the next afternoon at a little coffee shop in town. Neutral ground. She showed up looking tense, but there was a weird calm in her eyes. She didn't waste time. I don't know how to say this without making it worse, she started. But I've been waiting for someone to finally see through Ryan. And maybe Brian too. That last part hit me in the chest. I asked her what she meant. She took a breath. Ryan's been a parasite for years. But Brian, he's not just a bystander. I didn't get it. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. You know that crypto thing Ryan did last year? The one that blew up and left him broke. I nodded. She said, Brian was in on it. They did it together. That's where most of Ryan's debt came from. I stared at her. No words. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots, messages, emails, even a payment trail. Brian wasn't just aware of Ryan's disasters. He was in them. Helping, covering, even transferring money between his and Ryan's accounts. I felt the room tilt. Like I wasn't in my body anymore. He told me not to say anything, Morgan said quietly. Said it would just make things worse. And he promised to make it right. I believed him. But now I see he was protecting himself. I whispered, he used our savings? She looked at me. Didn't answer. She didn't have to. I suddenly remembered something 3 months ago. I had noticed a big withdrawal from one of our accounts. Brian said it was for emergency house repairs. He even showed me a fake invoice. I believed him. I felt sick. Morgan reached out and touched my hand. You weren't crazy. You were never crazy. I nodded slowly. Then asked, why are you telling me now? She hesitated. And then said, because I found out something else. I braced myself. Brian and Ryan went to your parents last month. Tried to borrow from them too. I blinked. What? They told your parents you were thinking of investing in Ryan's new business. Wanted to get them in before it launched. Your mom called me after you left last night, worried. That's when I realized, they're not just using you. They're trying to sell you. I couldn't breathe for a second. They went behind my back. Used my name. Used my reputation to trick my own parents. I stood up. I had to move. Think. Do something. Morgan grabbed my arm. I know you're angry. But if you're going to do anything, be smart. Be one step ahead. I'll help. I asked her what she meant. She smiled. Not in a happy way. A tired, sharp smile. I've been documenting everything for years. Bank records. Texts. Emails. Screenshots. You want to make a clean break? You'll need receipts. That was the moment the numbness cracked. Something in me snapped into place. I wasn't going to let them play me anymore. Not Brian. Not Ryan. Not any of them. I looked Morgan in the eye. Send me everything. And she did. By the end of the week, I had enough evidence to bury them financially, emotionally, and legally if I wanted to. But I wasn't finished yet. Because the more I dug, the more I found. Turns out Brian had another secret. One that had nothing to do with money. One that explained why he never defended me, and why Ryan always had so much leverage. A week passed. Every day, I found something new. Another transfer. Another lie. Another thread in the web. Brian and Ryan's fun. I had Morgan's folder. I had my bank records. I even checked my credit. Brian had applied for 2 cards in my name, never used them, just had them sitting there. Probably waiting for the next big idea. The night of the final confrontation, I didn't plan it to explode the way it did. But it did. And once it started, it didn't stop. Brian's mom invited us all to another Sunday dinner. Same house. Same table. Only this time, I said yes. I had one goal. I wanted them all in one place. When we arrived, the atmosphere was fake friendly. Forced smiles. Tense laughter. They thought the storm had passed. Brian sat beside me like everything was fine. He kept checking his phone, but he smiled when someone looked. Ryan wasn't there, running late again. Fitting. I waited until the food was served, drinks poured, and everyone was comfortable. Then I stood up and said, I think it's time for one more vote. They froze. Brian looked at me like he didn't understand. I pulled out a small stack of papers from my bag. I didn't drop them dramatically. I didn't raise my voice. I just laid them on the table, one by one. This, I said, pointing, is proof of a joint bank account between Brian and Ryan. Opened 3 years ago. Transferred nearly $60,000 total. Most of it from our accounts. Some from loans. Brian's mom opened her mouth. I held up my hand. This, I said, tapping another page, is a forged invoice. Brian gave it to me 3 months ago. Said it was for a roofing contractor. The company doesn't exist. Silence. And this, I held up the last page, is a copy of an email sent to my parents, using my name, promising them equity in Ryan's fake startup. Brian, you CC'd yourself. His face drained of color. Nobody spoke. So I kept going. I thought Ryan was the only con artist. But you. I turned to Brian. You're just better at hiding it. You knew I'd never say yes, so you worked around me. Used me. His mom whispered, that can't be true. Morgan spoke up from the far end of the table. It is. She pulled out her phone. I've got copies of the messages too. Brian asked me to cover for him when he took out the money. Told me he'd handle it before she notices. Brian finally stood. Angry now. What do you want from me? Huh? I was trying to fix things. Ryan was in over his head. I didn't think, you never think I cut him off. You scheme. You lie. You protect him because he knows your secrets. That's why you never defended me, isn't it? He looked at me. And for the first time in this entire mess, he looked guilty. I stepped closer. What does Ryan have on you, Brian? Silence. He blinked, swallowed. Then muttered, it's not like that. Then what's it like? He looked around the table. Then at his dad. Then at Morgan. Then he broke. He covered for me. Years ago. When I got into legal trouble with a job. Falsified reports. I could have gone to jail. He took the blame. I owed him. Dead quiet. Brian's dad spoke, soft but furious. You lied to us. To her. You used your wife to cover a debt you should have paid with honesty. Brian looked down. I didn't know what else to do. She always had control over the money. I needed a way to fix it before she noticed. There it was. That word again. Control. He thought of me as the one with the money. The power. The gatekeeper. Not a partner. Just a tool. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just reached into my purse again. One final paper. A folded document. I placed it in front of him. He stared at it. Opened it. His face crumbled. It was a divorce petition. Already signed on my end. No drama. No screaming. Just an end. Majority rules, right? I said quietly. Well, I vote to leave. Then I turned and walked out. Nobody stopped me. Not even his mother. I stayed in a hotel that night. 3 hours later, Morgan texted me. He left. No one said goodbye. The fallout hit fast. Brian tried calling. Left me a voicemail crying. Said he was lost. Said he didn't know how things got so bad. Said we could rebuild. I didn't answer. 2 days later, I served the papers officially. Turns out the prenup update and documentation saved me more than just money. It saved me years of dragging out a divorce I didn't know guilt over. Morgan kept helping. She actually decided to take legal action against Ryan for the unpaid loan. Ryan vanished for a bit. Deleted socials. Rumors say he's living in New Jersey now, working under a fake LLC. Brian moved back in with his parents. The family dinners stopped. I wish I could say I walked away clean. I didn't. There were nights I cried myself sick. Nights I questioned everything. 8 years with someone who looked me in the eye and still chose lies over truth. It haunts you. But now? Now I sleep. Peacefully. For the first time in years. And if there's one thing I learned? When someone says majority rules, remember this. You don't need a vote to leave a burning house. You just need the courage to walk out the door. And I did.